Hey, everybody. Good to see everybody. I'm going to give everybody just a few minutes to continue to join here, and then we will jump in. Hope you're all having a pretty good day. Hey, everybody. See a few more people joining. We'll get started here in just a few minutes. I will reiterate this here just in a couple minutes, but if anyone has any questions throughout, you can go ahead and ask those in the Q&A panel. If you have any preliminary questions unrelated to what you've got in the data, but you're curious about, feel free to throw those in there. Well, we're happy to speak to them. Right, just another minute or so here. Perfect time to wrap up an email or two on y'all's side if you need to. All right. Well, I think we are going to go ahead and start rolling here. First off, hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining. If you have not met me before, my name is Britt Benson-Greer. I'm the Director of Client Success here at Realtek Webmasters. I'm a former marketing account manager, so I certainly get excited about analyzing data and let that influence the strategies for the marketing campaigns. I'm joined here today by Caroline Ellis. She's our Manager of Strategic Accounts. Say hi, Caroline.
Hey, everybody.
We are really excited y'all joined us. This is the first installment of our webinar series, Real Insights. And I think we're going to have, hopefully, carry out some really good information for you guys. Before we get started, just a couple of quick housekeeping items. If you have questions, feel free to go ahead and put those in the Q&A. If you have anything throughout, pop that in there. And when we get to the end of the content, we'll go through any questions you may have and address and answer those. So today we're going to be going and looking at some key web search demand trends and some marketing benchmarks. These are really important points that are kind of shaping the digital environment for vacation rental managers from a web presence standpoint. Those two major components, again, it's the web demand. What are potential guests looking for? When are they looking to stay? How much are managers charging for those dates throughout the calendar? And then lastly, what are some insights that can inform your strategy based off what we're seeing in the data so you can make the most out of your year. On the other side, we're going to be looking at marketing benchmarks. How are the marketing channels performing? How does that relate to the state of the market? And where there's some opportunities for you to go seize the opportunity presented and then kind of counteract some slowdown. You hear a lot right now in the industry about reductions in traffic and interest, and there's a lot of things that you can do by projecting out across the information to inform some marketing strategies. So we'll talk about those as well. With that, I am going to go ahead and kick this over to Caroline to get us started.
Awesome. Thanks, Britt. Well, like Britt said, my name is Caroline Ellis, and I am the Manager of Strategic Accounts here at Realtek. Really excited to be looking at this data and sharing with you guys some of our takeaways, insights, and also tips and potential strategies that you can employ in your business based on what we're actually seeing real time across our clients' websites. So as we look at this first graph, I always think it's really important to not only look at the data and give you the insights, but also provide a little bit of context as to what you're actually looking at. So this graph is representative of our booking windows and average length of stay searches. So we call this or refer to this as our search demand. What that means is how people are interacting on the homepage of our clients' sites when they're conducting date searches. So the light blue bars that you see represented on this graph, they represent the percentage of searches that are happening for arrival dates in the months that you'll see across the x-axis on the bottom of the graph. The more fluid turquoise line is going to represent the average length of stay that people are searching for when they are searching for those arrival dates within those months. And that is represented on the y-axis on the right-hand side of this graph. So I'm going to start off by just talking about kind of what's right in front of us in the booking windows that we're in. And realistically, that's going to be April, May, June, and July, ending out our spring season and heading into what all of our clients have as a peak summer season. So some of the first initial takeaways that we can see from this graph is that April and June are the months that are representing the highest amount of search demand right now. Now, an interesting thing and kind of thing to consider with this graph is that this is an aggregate of the last 6 months worth of data. So this is taking into account looking back at the end of 2024 heading into 2025 and up through today. We can understand that the search demand for April might be a little bit higher this year and really kind of exceeding what we're seeing in those summer months, not only because it is representative of a shorter booking window, but also because Easter is falling within April this year. So an interesting kind of takeaway that we've heard from some of our marketing clients is that when they're comparing year over year data, they actually tend to combine March and April and look at them almost as 1 month. And then they look back at last year's March and April combined data. And what that allows them to do is realistically not notice the skewing of the data when it comes to where Easter and spring breaks might fall, since a lot of the time schools will base their spring breaks off of when Easter is, and it is a little bit of a moving target year over year. Another kind of interesting takeaway in looking at this graph specifically is that we see as we're heading into the summer that our length of stays are a little bit longer than what we've seen in years past. So we really are seeing about a 10 to 12 night average length of stay across May, June, and July. This is really interesting because a lot of the time we talk to our clients about their kind of standard week-long minimums when it comes to their summer stays. And in years past, because there has been a little bit of softening of that demand and kind of the occupancy that they may be seeing, it's a lot of conversation about should we lower that length of stay from 7 nights to 5 or even 3, pending your local area ordinances and how much power you have over that. But realistically, what we're seeing heading into the summer is that people have been searching a little bit earlier than they were in previous years, and they're also seeking to stay longer when they're conducting those searches. The kind of final point that I'll make about this kind of more immediate data is that the search demand for May is really high right now. And realistically, we talk about the kickoff of summer being Memorial Day, which it falls within the last 4 to 5 days of May, really meaning that June is where that major part of kind of summer demand is coming from. So May having such a high search demand right now is really indicating to us that people are searching for those spring dates. And a lot of the time, because that is a little bit of a softer month in terms of demand for our clients, those rates might be lower, the length of stay might be a little bit shorter, but the weather and experience in your area is still just as beautiful and wonderful as it would be for a June stay. So our kind of tip and strategy here is to really be marketing the benefits of coming at a time that is considered a more off-peak time. For the same reasons that a vacation rental manager kind of shudders at the thought of a shoulder season, your lower occupancy, lower length of stay requirements, and maybe even lower ADRs, those are 3 really great selling points to put in front of potential guests and past guests to show them the value of the vacation that they could have if they come at an off-peak time, which realistically is just continuing to build that customer loyalty and trust with your brand.
Yeah, great points there, Caroline. One thing, and we'll kind of come back around to this in just a minute or so, but I think it's important to call out. And Caroline mentioned this is the last 6 months of aggregated data. And so it's really encouraging to see this demand going a little further out into the year. That's certainly going to trend upward as we get closer to those dates. But being able to get bookings out in advance is something you really want to take advantage of for sure. But there's a big opportunity in terms of using promotional events to kind of control that pace and incentivize longer stays to block out calendar and set yourself up for higher rates by tilting that supply and demand ratio. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a second, but I wanted to kind of call attention to it while we're looking at the demand.
This next graph that we are going to take a look at, we refer to as our rent forecast. So what this is doing is taking this aggregate of our clients' websites. So it's giving us really a nice national view of what some of these averages are when we look at your upper, lower, and median nightly rates. So we did go ahead and pull out your April, May, June, and July, kind of what we're seeing with this graph. Realistically, unless you're looking at it and hovering over these months, it's a little hard to discern exactly where those rates are falling. So we thought we'd just give you kind of a high level view of what this looks like so far. A really interesting kind of takeaway and thing to point out is that if we think back to the search demand that we just looked at, May is looking really good right now, and there's a lot of very strong search demand, whereas July is a little bit softer in the demand. And we know that that's expected and reasonable because it is a little bit further out and those booking windows are typically staying a little bit shorter. But when you compare the median nightly rate of May to the median nightly rate of July and acknowledge that somebody could save up to or over $100 a night if they book in May versus July, that again positions you in a really nice way to put that information in front of guests, again, to really show them the value of coming during those times that are considered your more off-peak times. And it also is going to help you when it comes to occupancy and kind of looking at how you're pacing throughout the year.
Mm-hmm. One thing as we were kind of reviewing this data that we found pretty noteworthy is how much higher rates are getting into late 2025 here and getting into early 2026. We're certainly working off of a smaller sample size with these rates at this point, but it's important to note how that kind of works against the objective of growing the booking window, especially if someone's searching on the site, they're looking at your rates, and then they're going to look into next year to start planning their next vacation. Having a pretty vast discrepancy in that cost sets people up. There was some user behaviors that I think were learned during COVID that we may be looking to take advantage of where they're not necessarily there anymore. There used to be a real urgency and willingness to rebook. There was a lot of uncertainty, and especially in the beginning, people may have been trying to go ahead and secure their stay again for the next year coming out of lockdown. And I think that from that, managers took the ability to increase those rates and really maximize the return on it when we saw those surges in 21 going into 2022. But now, after years of more surplus, not necessarily less demand, but a lot of saturation in the market, more and more consumers are waiting until the last minute, knowing that there's going to be sort of a race to the bottom to some degree. And so you make sure that you're promoting those with some sort of event in advance if you're going to have that higher rate, to offer a discount for booking early, offer an incentive. We don't have time to get too deep into that today, but if you're interested in learning more about it, we did a presentation last year all about crafting promotion events to kind of control supply and demand and rates. And just shoot us an email. I'd be glad to share those deck slides with you.
Now, we did kind of want to start to break down some of this information a little bit more granularly. So up to this point, we've been talking about this kind of aggregate of data that is representative of our clients nationwide. So let's take a look at our beach destinations and really kind of what does that look like and what are the trends that we can identify. The first takeaway on this slide that you should notice is that the beach markets trends very much mirror and follow a similar trend as that national data that we just took a look at. But one thing that I do want to call out that very much relates back to what Britt was just talking about with these kind of learned COVID behaviors is when we look forward to 2026 compared to where we are sitting right now. So we have pulled out again our April, May, and June ADRs so that you can look at kind of what the upper, lower, and medians of those are looking like. And the biggest discrepancy to point out here and kind of the takeaway I want to spend a little bit more time diving into is really kind of looking 12 months into the future. So where we're sitting at now, April of 2025, and what some of those averages are, and then looking a year in advance and the discrepancy and spread of what those nightly rates represent. So we know, obviously, we're sitting in April. We are looking back at those 6 months worth of data, we know that as these dates are getting closer, rates are going to start decreasing in order to fill occupancy. So you can assume that probably these median rates have decreased a bit from where they may have been even 8 or 9 months ago. But even taking that into consideration, being able to identify that on the upper end of your average nightly rate, you have almost double in terms of what you're going to pay if you look ahead to 2026 is a really kind of wild metric to spend some time thinking about. If I am a consumer who is staying in one of your homes and I say, I really love this home, I really love the time of year that I'm staying, I want to make sure I can stay here with my family next year, I think I'm going to go ahead and book. And I do a date search on your website and see that I'm going to pay almost double nightly what I've paid this year. There realistically is no incentive for me to want to book ahead. So we talk a lot with our clients, and as Britt was just mentioning, about this shortened booking window and how ideally we'd revert back to having that kind of 6-month spread of I'm booking my vacation much earlier and much more in advance. But when we look at these nightly rates and we see how skewed they are the further out you look, there really is no reason for a consumer to book earlier. They have every reason to wait and hold and wait for you to drop your rates. So some things to kind of consider here and strategies that we've heard just in working with our different marketing clients is some clients consider offering the incentive that if you book your vacation for next year during your current vacation or within a certain amount of time after you depart, they'll honor that same nightly rate for next year. Now, that obviously is taking a bit of a gamble. It is gambling that the economy is not going to skyrocket and that you couldn't have gotten $1,300 a night for that rental. But the flip side of that is that if you don't offer an incentive like that, you take the gamble that the economy could turn the opposite way and your ADR might even be lower next year. So you really have to kind of weigh what is more important. Is it the potential that you could get people to book at these higher and premium rates, or is it filling up your calendar and your occupancy as early as you can? I want to kind of take a little bit of a step back and look more at our 2025 data and kind of scale back from 2026 real quick. And a really interesting look at our April, May, June, and July kind of nightly rates is that we can see here that July is actually trending ahead in terms of what all of those rates are looking like, whether you're looking on the lower, upper, or median range. So we can see that those nightly rents are higher typically. Now, if we think back to the search demand that we looked at the very beginning of this presentation, which we will hearken back to and refer back to pretty frequently, we can see that the demand for July is significantly lower. Well, not significantly, but a few points lower than our June and May demand, particularly June, where we know that that is the start of summer. That really is when things are going to pick up. But it's a really kind of interesting contrast that all of the rates in July are a little bit higher. One thing to kind of think about here is just making sure that you're staying competitive with your market. It's not to say that having higher nightly rates for July is necessarily the wrong move, because like we kept saying, this is an aggregate of 6 months worth of data. And as we move closer to July and that booking window shortens, the demand is naturally going to go up as people are more ready to book those vacations. But it's really important to keep your finger on the pulse of where you are competitively and notice if you have the opportunity to drop some of your rates while still coming out positively, but being able to undercut some of your competition so that you're a better value proposition for that potential client.
Yep. So let's kick it over to lake destinations specifically. You'll see sort of as expected, you're going to see those highest rates going into July and August comparatively to the rest of the year. But one thing I like about this particular graph is that the data is a little bit less compressed, so you can see a lot more clear trend of that seasonality. One call out I'd put to lake destination managers when it comes to your marketing is to keep in mind, don't sleep on the cost efficiency of lake markets versus your nearby beach markets. Lakes are a great place to spend time with the family. It's a great summertime destination. But if you're looking at the rate comparisons throughout this presentation, that median rate is a good chunk lower and tends to stay a little bit lower even as it fluctuates with the season. So I'd make sure you're highlighting that in your marketing. Not only that it's a great place to go and all the attractions in your destination, but also the value and the things that you can do with that extra money during your stay. Kind of going back and looking at our high points here, you see we do have July and then also December as some places where you're seeing rates kind of pumped up a little bit. Presently, about 24% of the total demand is occurring in July. but that 3% of total demand is noteworthy in December. You see it right here as you're trending down into the off season. That December boost up, and that's most certainly relevant to the holiday season. It's important to consider that when you're doing Caroline was talking about when someone goes to depart and you make that book your next summer's vacation offering, especially right now, if you don't have people who are booking for summer, go ahead and start talking to them about a December booking instead of maybe clinging to the idea that they will come. But also, when you're doing those departure kind of campaigns for them, consider offering them a discount to, or even not a discount, to stay in the Christmas season by getting ahead versus going all the way to next summer. There may be more opportunity there because there's clearly an emphasis in that market for December stays.
The last market that we'll kind of jump a little bit more granularly into is going to be our mountain destinations. And a really cool takeaway from our mountain destinations is that we can see as we look at our April, May, and June averages that rates stay fairly consistent. So from April into June on the median average daily rate, you're seeing less than a $100 a night increase, which realistically means that this pricing is staying a little bit more stable. And the benefit to that really is from the eyes of the consumer. And that would be our main tip, is to get in front of your potential guests or your past guests to let them know that they don't have to chase a savings when they're coming to stay with you. There's not necessarily a shoulder season that falls so under in terms of the price and daily rate that that's really the best time to stay, even if realistically maybe it's not the best time in your market. These guests who are coming to this market are really able to choose when it works best for them to come and visit. And the only real outliers that we see in the mountain destinations when it comes to those average rates is going to be October and December. Now, this is really understandable. When we think about October and the mountains, we're thinking about the leaves changing. We're thinking about there being really crisp weather. So you're coming out of the summer. It's really nice outside. It's still mild, but we're not quite into the winter when you need to start bundling up. So it's a really high season for a lot of mountain markets. December is going to be a standout in almost any market that we look at, but specifically with mountain destinations, an important call out is that this is when their slopes are opening. So if all conditions are perfect, Thanksgiving weekend is really going to be that opening weekend for the ski slopes and the ski resorts to reopen. And as we head into December, you're going to have more built-in time off for many people who don't have to use PTO. Kids and families are going to be on spring, or not spring, but holiday break. So we have those kind of major holiday reasons to travel. But then there's also a really kind of big event that is happening wherein your ski season is really getting started. So what we can see in this graph is showing us that demand for December is really high right now. It may not surpass what we're seeing for the summer, but again, relating that back to our short booking windows, we wouldn't necessarily expect to see that. What we do see, though, is that people are looking to stay for longer, and they are looking as far out as December to start that kind of booking process and trip planning. So while we know that your rates are going to be a little bit higher during those times, and we know that you do have the ability and opportunity to keep those rates a little higher, again, it's all about keeping your finger on the pulse of how are we looking comparatively to our competitors and in our market in general, making sure that your rates are staying competitive. And to Britt's previous point, here sitting in April, knowing that your rates are a little bit more elevated, maybe that presents an opportunity to encourage people towards those October, December bookings by having an elevated rate and offering them a little bit of a discount so that you can see that occupancy start to rise a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm. All right, so now let's take a look at booking rate. This data here is looking at the spread of bedrooms. What's getting the highest impressions? Where are people booking, and at what clip are they doing so? Sort of as I was expected, a 2 to 4 range right down the middle where there's a lot of overlap from the entire data set that we're looking at across destinations and business size, certainly the highest concentration. One important outlier to note, though, is that in the mountain destinations, that 2-bedroom really doesn't perform quite as strong. So it's important to think of ways to promote those if that's a priority for you. You have a large segment of your inventory that is a little bit lower bedroom count. Come up with some really creative marketing strategies around that. And if it's not as much of a priority from it, you can go ahead and kind of lean away from it. If just driving bookings at the highest rate that you can is a big priority right now, your marketing should certainly be focused on those higher bedroom count properties.
Yeah, so kind of the flip side of what we're looking at in these number of bedrooms that are being searched and engaged with the most is thinking about these higher bedroom counts. So your 5+ bedroom rentals. Now, right now, as we're heading into the summer, that's when we would expect a lot of those types of rentals to be in high demand, because you're thinking that there might be family vacations. Maybe it's a multi-generational type family vacation, a group vacation of friends. Maybe you have a couple of different families traveling. But we have heard from our marketing clients that their larger bedroom homes are the ones that seem to be pacing behind right now. So this search demand that we're looking at in comparison to what we're hearing real time from our clients really is lining up. So what can you do to try to position these properties and get them more in front of people? You want to make sure that you're highlighting the benefits of staying in a larger home. A lot of the times they can seem a little bit intimidating because they are going to come at a higher price point. But a benefit of that is that many times the more bedrooms that a home has, the more types of luxury amenities that it might offer, whereas a 1 or 2 bedroom home might be a little bit more simple. So when we're thinking about our 5+ bedroom homes, you want to make sure you're talking about those amenities. You also can demonstrate the value of these homes, because although staying in a 5-bedroom home for 5 days is naturally going to be more expensive than staying in a 2-bedroom home for 5 days, if you're splitting this vacation across multiple families or across different individuals or across couples, the cost per head for those 5 days might come out really comparably to what somebody might pay if they just went and stayed in a 2-bedroom home. But you have the added benefit of staying under the same roof as your loved ones or your close friends, and being able to take advantage of the fact that you do have a little bit more space to move about. In addition to that, if you are a property manager whose company allows events like a family reunion, a bachelor or bachelorette party, maybe even a micro wedding, those are really important offerings to get in front of people. That is not a given in this industry. Not every company is going to allow large group stays or specific event stays. But if you are a property manager who does, you should be marketing that and putting that out in front of people. Kind of one last strategy that you could deploy if getting out some of this organic messaging still doesn't seem to be converting is that you could look at running a small promotion on these homes. And so what that could look like is offering a promotion as to what their average nightly rate is now, or strategically looking to increase that rate a little bit so that then you can offer an even more aggressive discount. When we talk about promotions with our clients, it is all about kind of playing that psychological game with your potential guest. And a 15% discount compared to a 30% discount, that 30% discount is going to perform better every time because people think they're getting a better value. So if you go in and you inflate your prices a little bit so that you can offer even more money off, and at the end you come out ahead or along the same lines as what you would have made if somebody booked it, then at the end of the day, you're just increasing your occupancy for your larger homes and doing yourself a service in the process.
Great notes there, Caroline. So on the marketing track, we're going to kind of switch gears over into marketing benchmarks. Organic search, this is all about your search engine optimization, the high impact that those high rankings on Google search pages are going to have. I believe it's maybe on the next slide, but only 1% of Google searchers are going to go to the second page of results. So organic is certainly a valuable place to get some visibility. Looking at this year's numbers, we're going to shoot you straight. Traffic is down. And that's both between all traffic from the website through all channels and referrals. And you'll see that that's really coincides with a trend in the organic itself. The fortunate thing being that when those two coincide, that typically does indicate a larger problem with demand at scale than it does necessarily with positional rankings. So whether you're doing your marketing internally or you're working with an agency, cut a little bit of slack for the fact that it is about taking advantage for the opportunities presented more so than, having any panic about the efficacy of what you're doing. Perhaps a little biased on my side, but, I think that note goes for anyone doing marketing across the board. The really positive element of this is that conversion rate is actually gone up a little bit. And so we're seeing right here there's a positive increase throughout the start of the year. And that, from my dollar, that indicates a pretty good downturn in conversion rate, or excuse me, a decrease in window shoppers. So while chasing year-over-year gains may not be extremely realistic across the board, it's important to recognize the opportunity that's presenting. So looking at bookings, we actually saw a little bit of an increase over last year's numbers, especially in early March. And that early booking trajectory is a little bit opposed to last year.
So what are some strategies that you can deploy? Britt talked about the overall goal ultimately is that you want to rank on page one as high as you can for your highest search volume term. In a lot of cases, in most markets, that's going to be your destination plus vacation rentals. So Asheville vacation rentals. But the problem with focusing all of your efforts on a term like that is that it is going to be a much longer play. So although you want to make sure you're incorporating those types of terms in all of the content that you're producing and making sure that your website is optimized for them, you also want to lean into these secondary opportunities or our longer tail keywords that can present to you gains and faster wins. So especially as we are moving into the summer season. So we know that right now, even if we're trending behind compared to last year, demand and searches are up. So we're heading into our really peak time for people to be booking for these June and July dates, meaning that there's more traffic naturally coming to your website. So how can you capitalize on these secondary terms? You might want to look at your inventory and figure out how can we position ourselves to offer or put forth a little bit more specific of an offering. Let's say 4-bedroom Asheville vacation rentals with a pool. Although that term itself may have a fairly low search volume, you do know that somebody who is searching for that term has already done enough research to know exactly what they need from a vacation rental. So the traffic that is going to hit your site as a result of ranking well for a term like that you can secure the ranking for fairly quickly, is that when that person hits your site, they are a little bit more qualified of traffic versus someone who might be searching a little bit more generally because they may be at the beginning of their vacation planning process and even just kind of deciding if this is even the location that they want a vacation in. As Britt mentioned, only 1% of Google search users are going to reach that second page. So figuring out where you can win and where you can win quickly, particularly as people are conducting more searches, is going to lead to better conversion once they hit your site based on the way that you can present those offerings to them. Now, one thing to kind of keep in mind here is that while we looked at all of the traffic and how things are a little bit down this year, admittedly, compared to last year, is that you don't want to put all of your eggs into one basket when it comes to how you're getting your brand and messaging out there through marketing. If you're only investing in organic, then you're missing out on people that you might be able to reach via email or social media or even paid search. So really making sure that you're diversifying this budget so that you are appearing on as many channels as you can to give yourself the best opportunity for that conversion and to drive people to your site is really the best move that you can make in a year that we know is starting off looking like it is a little down compared to last year. So in looking at paid search and comparing 2025 to 2024, a couple takeaways that we can see from looking at these two graphs is one, that our cost per click is down just slightly, and our click-through rate is also down. So that might seem a little bit concerning because realistically, you want to drive that traffic to your site, right? But what we can also discern in looking at our median ad revenue and cost is that the median revenue that we're seeing come in as a result of these campaigns has increased. Now, I don't want to overlook or not mention that we do see that our cost for those campaigns has also increased incrementally. But when you kind of combine all of this together, we're looking at a lower click-through rate for an incrementally increased budget that is leading to almost $6,000 more on average per month for people to take home. So with just a couple $100s more, you're going to see that return on ad spend go even further, particularly because those costs per clicks are down. Now, one thing that I will also point out in these trends is compared to our organic trends, they are looking a little bit like they're not following the same trend as 2024. So we know that as our CPC is beginning to decrease, this time last year we really saw it spike in April. So as we move more into Q2 and we're able to assess what all of this data looks like, join us for our next webinar. It'll be really interesting to see how we can compare what we're seeing and kind of how those trends are comparing to last year, particularly because we can see that they're starting to divert a little bit and not follow exactly that same trend. So one thing that we want to make sure we are looking at and kind of paying attention to, acknowledging that our click-through rate is down, is that you want to be treating your paid search campaigns with kind of this extra layer of discernment. You don't want to just set them and forget them. Whereas in the past, let's say 2021, you realistically could have created a campaign, set that budget, and seen it convert really well for you. But these campaigns, knowing that people may not be engaging with them quite as much, are going to require a little bit more attention. And what that means is that you should be looking specifically at your keywords and how much they are costing you. So we saw that average cost per click is going down, but maybe you look at a campaign and you can identify that 2 or 3 keywords are starting to eat up the majority of your budget. And our recommendation there would be to allocate those keywords to a different campaign and give them a higher daily budget so that they're not cannibalizing your one campaign with just a couple of keywords.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to get more mileage. If you've got your cost per click that is going down, looking at our last graph, and some of your keywords are converting a whole lot, taking them off, letting that budget be contained and know that it's going to generate for you is a great way to exhibit a little bit of control. What you also kind of have the opportunity to do is then take those lower cost per click terms for your different rental types and build out separate campaigns for those so that you can provide a more catered description, a more catered landing page for them, and it's going to go in front of more qualified opportunities. Let's say somebody is looking for pet-friendly rentals in Siesta Key. If you're bidding on ads specifically for that, and you pop up and there's vacation homes in Siesta Key, condos in Siesta Key, but your ad says pet-friendly rentals in Siesta Key. We love your four-legged friends, just like we love you. Come stay with us. That's going to position you a little bit better. And now even though the total cost per account incrementally up, that cost per click is down. So if you can create strong engagement, it's a really, really positive opportunity. And it's a really cost-effective time to experiment a little bit with how you can get more granular in the ads. So then what I would really encourage you to do is, whether you're segmenting out those sections or not, is just make sure that you're being really, really aligned in your headlines and your copy. I mentioned a second ago that you want to take those landing pages where you drop them coming out of an ad and cater them to where you believe they're going to want to be in the booking funnel. I was actually doing some research for a different presentation earlier this week, and I found something really, really interesting where we had done that for an account. We were looking at rentals, connected them directly into a search results page. And we actually found that over a year period where we A/B tested it against dropping them on the homepage was the more productive landing page. So my big advisement there would be get more granular, but don't always follow just pure intuition on where you drop them into the website. If they click through the ad, really let the data lead you in that place. A nice, easy win, especially if you're getting really, really critical with your paid search, trying to milk out every dollar you can, is just be willing to go pause and cut those really expensive terms that have a low conversion rate. There's a lot of stats to be looking at with keyword optimization, but at the end of the day, if it's not converting very commonly and it's expensive, it is eating out of your budget. You should just get it out of there. So then let's take a look here at email. Looking at the open and click-through rates, we've got a pretty steady line on the click-through. And I think that what's important to recognize there is that while you can A/B test your subject lines, and there are certainly things you can do to improve that click-through rate, there's always going to sort of exist some stability within a threshold. So one place to maybe allocate resources and time is just in growing that list. If you're getting a set amount of clicks on or a click-through rate on every email that you send out, the more people you send that to, the more people you're going to get to the site, more opportunity you create. You will notice in terms of open rate, we've got a pretty big outlier here in January. For January, what's important to note is that we're going into the part of the year where we are advertising really, really heavily for Book Direct Day, which occurs right at the beginning of February. So there's going to be multiple emails really hyping people up for a big promotion, a big opportunity to save on that year's vacation. So engagement is certainly going to go up a whole lot. A lot of the subject lines are going to be very big opportunity to save, very urgency driven. So that's going to keep that open rate high. Um, I think one thing that's really interesting as well, kind of diverging a little off topic here, is looking at the efficacy of that promotion year over year over year and how it influences engagement. We did some analytics on a few of our key markets and how over a 4-year period, the engagement with their email and the engagement with booking properties through the promotion increased exponentially. And I believe in one example, they went from 7 bookings to about 50 bookings for that event. Certainly maybe a high-end outlier, but really, really heavy engagement with that as an email campaign and a promotional campaign. Caroline, want to talk to us a little bit about some other strategies we've got for email?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, to Britt's point, growing your list is definitely a goal that you should be kind of continually working on, as people are checking out of their rental, making sure that that list or the recently departed guests are being added into your email platform. But to kind of take it one step further, although maintaining things and having things stay fairly consistent year over year is more ideal than seeing a downturn, the goal is obviously always to increase engagement. And so what's the best way to do that when it comes to email? Britt talked about doing some of that A/B testing of subject lines, seeing if you can get some of that, see if you can use some different testing to see if you can get those open rates up. But one thing that we're really starting to lean into and encouraging our clients towards is segmenting. So segmenting your audience can kind of, we put them in, let's say, 2 kind of main buckets. One of them might be experience focused. So you might want to target contacts who already have a booking with you for a specific time of the year. I'll use Memorial Day as just kind of a running example. Let's say that at the beginning of May, you export your list of all of your upcoming reservations for Memorial Day, and then you send them an email about their upcoming stay. Within that email, you could include any sort of events that might be happening, maybe a parade or a local street festival or a concert or live music, something like that. That way you're helping these guests who have already booked with you to start putting together their itinerary, but it also opens up the opportunity for you to really act as that local area expert for them. So maybe there is a street festival, or maybe there's a concert that happens in your downtown area. And because of that, you know that certain streets are going to be closed and you know that parking is going to be a little bit harder. But maybe you have some local tips of where people could go so that they could park for relatively cheap while still being able to enjoy this event. Somebody who's traveling into your market is most likely not going to have that information. But you guys are on the ground, you're your local area experts, and engaging with a guest before they come in this very personalized way not only is helping them to start planning their vacation, it is also mentally starting their vacation on a better note, because you're providing that extra step of customer service. You're beginning to curate that relationship with them because they have booked directly with you, and they're seeing the direct benefit of that, because now all of a sudden you're helping to ease a frustration that they didn't even anticipate before they even arrive. So it's a really great way for you to start building that relationship prior to them even checking in. The second kind of bucket that we can talk about is a reservation focus type of segment. And so what that's going to look like is being able to segment out from your property management software, which is just kind of an endless amount of data for these guests who have stayed with you before, and really just figuring out how to harness that. So what we can look at is knowing who has booked with you in the past and who doesn't have a current reservation now. So that could be a more general call out of, hey, we missed you. We really loved hosting you last year. We noticed you haven't booked. We noticed you haven't rebooked with us. Maybe you offer some type of repeat booking discount. Maybe you tell them about some new things that are happening in your area or new things that have happened within your company or your team, really kind of adding to that level of personalization. But even more granular than that, you could look at people who stayed with you last June 1st through the 8th who haven't rebooked for this year. And maybe you know that that week specifically is pacing behind in June. You can market specifically to those people, talking to them about things that they can do during that time, but hearkening back to the vacation that they've already taken. So remind them about what a great time that they had with their family, and then make that encouragement to rebook. And maybe that's because you've lowered your length of stay requirements. Maybe it's because you've lowered your average daily rate. Maybe it's not even a specific promotion. It's just changes that you've made dynamically that you want to put in front of those people to further encourage them towards that conversion. So the reason that we really encourage our clients to lean into segmenting is that in almost every instance where we have deployed these types of strategies, we have seen the engagement of these campaigns skyrocket. Now, I don't want to sit here and pretend that we are emailing 30,000 people in one segment. Your segments are going to be smaller groups of people that you're reaching out to. It may be out of your list of 12,000 that only 200 of them are going to receive this email. And you might be sitting there thinking, well, why is that even worth my time if it's only 200 people? But if you can garner bookings and conversions by speaking to people very specifically, that is so much more worth your dollars than to just send out generic messages to 12,000 people every month because you feel like you have to. So when you can really lean into segmenting, you avoid your list feeling that fatigue of you being in their inbox all the time. You are marketing very specific messaging to specific people. And then when you run something like a promotion, maybe that is site-wide, hitting that entire list is going to be so much more meaningful and impactful that you'll begin to see your engagement rates increase, whether you are segmenting or sending out your more general messaging, because you're diversifying the way you're communicating with those guests.
Good stuff there, Caroline. So that kind of brings us to the end of our content here. We've got about 10, 12 minutes here at the end to answer a few questions. Looks like we've got one that came in through the Q&A. Can we break down the clients and the markets they serve? What percentage of the data shown is in Florida beach markets? Let me scoot back up here to that web demand data. Actually, you know what? I tell you what, let's go to NRM forecast. We've got it a little bit more laid out by beach markets. In terms of the Florida beach markets, I don't have the data off the top of my head. I would say, pretty frankly, that a large portion of Realtek's client base exists inside of Florida. So this aggregated data looking at the beach markets, I would expect to be about a quarter, maybe 30% from Florida destinations. I'd be curious, Jason, if this corresponds kind of to what you're seeing if you're in a Florida market, and if not, if it's a little bit different, I'd love to learn about that.
But this is also information. Hey, Jason, I know you personally. This is also information that you can speak with your marketing manager about. So these are reports that we do have access to. Britt and I are looking at them pretty regularly, as are our client managers. And so in speaking with your client manager, she can definitely kind of walk you through also what she's seeing in a more granular fashion than maybe this presentation hit on for your specific market.
Mm-hmm. All right, another good question we've got. Bob is interested in hearing if Realtek offers email marketing campaigns similar to Constant Contact. I will speak at the high level about this because we certainly do, but I want to let Caroline kind of expand on what I say here. We certainly do offer email marketing campaigns. It's one of the primary marketing services that we go after. Constant Contact is what you call an ESP. So it's an email service provider. It's essentially a tool to run your email marketing out of. Realtek has actually recently launched our own ESP called Realtek Connect. And we're really excited about the different things we're going to be able to do. It's going to set us up for a lot of the more advanced segmenting that we were talking about. Caroline, you want to go into a little more detail about some of those capabilities?
Absolutely. Yeah, Bob, I'm really excited that you asked this question because we really are looking for any and all opportunities to talk about Realtek Connect with our current clients or anybody who might not currently be working with us. So like Britt mentioned, it is our own customized email marketing platform wherein we are designing custom HTML templates that are mimicking and mirroring what your site looks like so that your branding can really be carried over from your home page and your search results page all the way into that potential guests or maybe past guests inbox, really creating that sense of consistency. we are designing these templates specifically for vacation rental managers. And what that means is that you're going to see elements and cards for your featured rentals that include things like icons that you're used to seeing on your property details page if your property is pet friendly, or if it has a pool, the number of bedrooms that it might have, as well as elements that might mimic the search bar on your homepage, the quick search that people are engaging with, wherein we can really manipulate what those results look like and where we're sending people on your website. So yes, we do offer email marketing and campaigns similar to that of Constant Contact. I love Connect as a platform, and so I would wager that it actually performs better than Constant Contact, because we are building these templates to be specific to you and not just kind of a drag and drop type of editor. And then kind of taking that to the next level in terms of the segmenting that we just talked about, that's also, like I said, something that we're really implementing more and more this year, is how can we be strategic with our clients who are utilizing email marketing to talk to them about where those opportunities lie to reach out to specific segments instead of just hitting their entire list continually.
Good stuff there. Any other questions before we kind of wrap up here? Looks like that's the two we have. I would go ahead. Looks like we've got a follow-up question here from Bob. Are we able to import the current database for Constant Contact? Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
We can help you export that out and then move it over into the new email platform. I am going to quickly, I believe a lot of the folks here are clients of ours, but I want to go ahead and put in both my email address and Caroline's into the chat. If anyone has any questions that come up kind of after you get off or you're thinking about shower thoughts, feel free to send us an email. And like I mentioned earlier, there are a couple of presentations that go deeper on some of these topics. Shoot me an email if you would like me to send you those deck slides, especially on how to formulate promotions and some of the impacts of really controlling that supply demand ratio to get the maximum ADR by driving bookings early. Unless there are any other questions, we're going to go ahead and let everyone go. Thanks again for joining us. I hope you got a lot out of it, and we look forward to seeing you in the future. Thank you, KT. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.